Hey guys, welcome back! I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. I was so excited when I found the perfect rental house. It had everything I wanted. A nice big yard, a killer entertainment system, and best of all, a private pool out back. The landlord seemed cool at first. She was an older lady named Karen who lived a few blocks away. We signed the lease agreement and I moved in the following week. At first everything was great. I had a few friends over to barbecue and swim during the day on weekends. But Karen started complaining that we were being too noisy. Then she freaked out if I had more than one car in the driveway overnight. She was definitely one of those naggy, nitpicky landlords. Her biggest issue seemed to be with me using the pool at night. I worked a late shift, so I liked to come home and take a midnight swim to relax. The pool was surrounded by a privacy fence and the whole backyard was secluded. But Karen insisted it was indecent for me to swim naked, even though there was no chance of anyone seeing me. One weekend evening, I was floating around the pool unwinding after a long week. Out of nowhere, flashlights start shining from the back gate, and I hear Karen yelling about calling the cops. I scrambled to grab a towel and ran over to see two police officers confronting her. Karen was screaming that I was committing lewd acts in the pool after dark. She demanded that the cops arrest me immediately. I explained that I was simply swimming nude in a private fenced-in pool. The cops kind of chuckled and told Karen it wasn't illegal, but she refused to let it go. Karen insisted they inspect the pool area to look for evidence. At this point, I was getting annoyed with her ridiculous behavior. I told the officers they were not allowed to search my backyard without a warrant. That set Karen off even more. She started shouting about evicting me and saying I was destroying the morals of the neighborhood. The cops had enough and warned Karen to leave me alone, or she could be charged with harassment. As the officers turned to leave, Karen tried to get in my face, calling me trash and threatening to make my life hell. Without thinking, I put up my hands to block her and gave her a shove away from me. The police saw the whole thing go down. They immediately cuffed Karen, saying I was defending myself after she assaulted me. Karen caused such a scene that a bunch of neighbors came out to watch her get carted off by the cops. She was yelling about suing me as they put her in the squad car. I found out later that she spent the night in jail and got cited for disorderly conduct. Over the next few weeks, Karen constantly sent me angry letters threatening eviction. She would show up pounding on my door at all hours while I was trying to sleep. Her harassment was so out of control, I finally talked to a lawyer and took her to court for a restraining order. The judge reviewed the facts and granted a 2-year order for Karen to stay 100 yards away from me and my residence. She also sent the eviction notices back, nullifying them since I didn't break any lease terms. It felt awesome seeing Karen's face when even the law sided against her. With the court stuff handled, I thought I was finally rid of dealing with Karen. But then I got a notice in the mail that her house was going into foreclosure auction. A light bulb went off in my head for the perfect revenge plot. I talked to my bank and real estate agent to get pre-approved for a loan. I watched the auction closely and put in the winning bid once it was low enough. For a satisfyingly small amount of money, I was now the legal owner of Karen's house. It felt so good pulling up to her front door and taping the eviction warning to kick her off of my new property. Karen's look of shock when she saw me was priceless. She called me a sleazy scumbag and said I must have rigged the auction. Nope, sorry Karen, I just used the free market to get your house fair and square. The cherry on top was using my new garage to store all the pool toys and lawn equipment that drove her crazy when I was renting. Every time Karen came by to pick up more of her stuff, I made sure to be out there in my swim trunks washing my new car. There was nothing she could do anymore except watch me enjoying the same kind of backyard fun that she tried so hard to ruin. I even hosted an epic nude pool party once she finished moving out, although I did install some new privacy fencing first. In the end, Karen's crazy crusade totally backfired. If she just chilled out and left me alone in the first place, none of this would have happened. I almost want to thank her for the fun revenge plot that landed me a sweet new house. But I'm just happy to relax in the pool in peace without that nosy landlord hassling me ever again. The next one is a pro-revenge story. My former boss was, simply put, an absolute jerk. He was the type of person who could be so condescending while acting as if he was doing you a favor. His condescending attitude was sometimes downright abusive, and he seemed to have a particular problem with all of the female employees, acting as if they were dumb and needed assistance with every step. He loved to scream at people regardless of how minor their mistake was, if there even was one. He was a slave driver and expected everyone to sacrifice their own personal lives for their job. The thing that sparked this revenge was him telling me to miss my older sister's birthday to come into work on a day that I had already booked off. No one liked him, my colleagues in the department, around 10 or so, and I couldn't stand him being here anymore. So we followed the protocol. All of us compiled the evidence we had of him not sticking to booked-off holiday schedules, using inappropriate and sometimes abusive language, and put it all in one Google Doc. This was step 1. Step 2 was getting a cherry on top. We did this by getting him to have one of his screaming tantrums at one of us. We wanted this to be as damning as possible, and the youngest and smallest girl among us volunteered to be the bait. She intentionally made a beginner's mistake in her paperwork, something bound to get her yelled at, and the idiot took the bait. You see, he liked to do his scoldings in front of all of us to prove a point or rule by fear, as he called it. This gave us the perfect opportunity to film it from behind our desks and add it to the Google Doc. Now you see, in our company, there's this really poorly made email system. You can send an email to an entire department, and I mean entire, as long as you have its name and the manager's name. But the thing about this was that all of this information was completely and freely given to employees. This means that a person could send whatever email they want to the entire company, including the CEO. So one morning at 10 a.m., to ensure that as many people would be working as possible, we made a burner email and sent the Google Doc through an email to everyone in the company. It took a little while as there were many departments to get through, but we got there in the end. We gave the email the subject, boss's name, vital information, branch name, department name. Of course, our boss received the email as well, and you could basically hear the commotion from his office, as people all over the company were contacting him to ask what the hell this was about. HR conducted a light investigation into him and took heavy disciplinary action. As far as I know, he wasn't directly fired, but instead he resigned. And a month after that, we never saw him again, and he was replaced by a new guy who was also a jerk, but just less of one. His expressions during the whole ordeal helped me sleep at night. The next one is a petty revenge story. Title: The Teenage Odyssey. Our tale begins in my teen years about 11 years ago. It was summer, and my parents wanted to go on vacation. Me, being a 16-year-old with a gaming addiction and a strong desire for independence, offered to house and dog sit while they and my sister went on vacation. Some important background information is probably needed here, so people don't misunderstand. I'm from a safer and more secure place than the US. We lived in the suburbs, and by the time I was 12, I had been taught most life skills. The only dangers I could face would be alcohol poisoning and strains to my wrist from excessive gaming, typical threats for a boy in a country where 16-year-olds can buy beer. The Boy and the Karen Megasaurus. Rex. Week 1. While gaming took up 90% of my time, I still did all the chores around the house, with a few exceptions. I checked the mailbox and found a handwritten letter with ancient runes. Using my old doctor's notes as a Rosetta Stone, I deciphered that it was from the president of our equivalent of an homeowners association. Imagine an homeowners association with a fifth of the power of the typical homeowners association in the US, a Hawkeye of the homeowners association Avengers, receiving only participation awards in a sports context. The letter said that the grass in my front lawn was too tall according to regulations. I cut the grass that same day to keep the peace. The day after, I received another letter from the same author. The roses in my front yard were going too far out through the fence. I complied again. On the third day, the true cause of annoyance revealed itself. My backyard's bushes were too tall. This is where I finally got irritated, as you have to enter my parents' property to check the bush's height. I decided to visit my direct neighbor, who was in the Homeowners Association board, to ask about the letters. She informed me that they were from the Mega Karen living 10 houses down the street. She had been kicked out of the Homeowners Association board after poisoning 3 dogs in the neighborhood with rat poison-laced treats. Not wanting to deal with her, I decided to let the case rest and leave my bushes untrimmed. The boy, the planted bomb, and the instigation. A week into my parents' vacation, after being alone for 7 days, I decided to plan a party. But in my post-nut clarity, I remembered the saying, "Idiots be fading, but a good Counter-Strike match lasts forever." Instead, I opted for a LAN party, inviting friends to play Counter-Strike Source and enjoy energy drinks. During the LAN party, a loud knock on the door brought 2 surprised cops. They had received reports of a loud party with drugs involved. Me. Does energy drinks count as drugs? Cop 2. No. Me. Then I have no idea what you are talking about. The cops realized they had been misled and left, and we continued our gaming. 2 days later, the mega Karen showed up at my door yelling that my drug party kept her up all night. I reminded her that the homeowners association had no power to take our house, and that she was kicked out of the homeowners association due to the poisoning incident. I also told her that I didn't even have a party, and that she needed to stay away from my backyard. She threatened to have me and my parents arrested, claiming the poison treats were meant for my dog. I slammed the door on her, furious. No one threatens my dog. Perfect legal pettiness. Now, for my revenge, I had about 4 days before my parents returned. I made sure to use them wisely. I got all the necessary approvals from the police and the real homeowners association neighbor. Then, I went to talk to the neighbors surrounding the mega Karen's house. I offered to do all the yard work, which involved loud equipment, around her house. Legally, we were allowed to make noise from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with yard work, but I didn't care. I wanted to be as petty as possible. I just kept making noise and working on her yard. Whenever she complained, I simply told her that her plants weren't up to homeowners association standards. On a Friday at 8 a.m., my friends and I gathered in front of her house. We made sure to have all the tools ready, and we were set for our revenge. We used speakers at the exact legal limit for noise, and most of her neighbors joined in during the day. The mega Karen called the cops twice, but they left after seeing my permits. We kept up the noise until the exact time limit. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Some setup of the scene. This would have been back in the mid-1970s. I was in elementary school. I don't remember what grade age, but that school was 1st through 3rd, so I was somewhere between 5 and 8 years old. Although I remember starting to dislike school because of being bullied by classmates in 2nd grade. So it was more likely 2nd or 3rd grade, age 6, 7. I was expected to do my morning routine, get up, get dressed, have breakfast, and walk to the bus stop entirely on my own. The bus stop was about 500 or a tenth of a mile away and around a sharp corner at the end of the route. This meant that while there was a chance I could see the bus go by if I was running late and on my way, but because of the angles involved, there was little chance the driver could see me if I was late, so they wouldn't know to stop and wait for me. I don't remember if I was dragging my feet or just got up late that morning, but by the time I got to the bus stop that morning, it was too late. The bus had come and gone without me. In the past, when this happened, I'd sadly walk back home, tell my mother, and she'd drive me in. But for some reason this morning, she decided that it wasn't happening. I don't know if she was trying to teach me a lesson or just had enough or what, but she told me that I had to walk. No, she wouldn't be coming with me. A young girl about 6 or 7 walking about a 2-mile route alone. I was terrified. There were few sidewalks, mostly just dirt paths worked into the side of the road, if that. Plus, due to elements that I now know are not good for a child to go through, by this time I definitely had issues doing anything wrong in the eyes of adults around me. So I had this additional fear of anyone seeing me on this walk of shame. So I made sure no one saw me. If I saw any vehicle coming, I'd hide. I couldn't handle the thought of anyone witnessing this. I walked, and walked, and walked. It felt like forever, but I walked the entire way. And I finally got there and walked into the office to report my tardiness. It turns out that my mother had not intended me to actually do that. She had called the school to have someone come and meet me on the route. Not that she said anything about this to me. The bus driver had gotten back into her bus and drove the route they thought I'd have taken. And then when she didn't see me, she then got into her personal car and did it again and again, trying to find me. Multiple people were sent out to look for me, but again in my mind, I couldn't allow anyone to see me in this shame. Plus, I was old enough to know about stranger danger, and was scared about that too. I absolutely was not going to let anyone find me. I think they were actually on the phone with the police when I walked in the office door. As for fallout, I'm sorry, but I can only speculate based on other memories. My mother would have been chastised by the school for not telling me to expect someone to be looking for me to offer a ride. I would then have been punished, yelled at, spanked, grounded, because my mother could never handle being wrong, so it had to be my fault. I don't remember ever having to do it again, though. The next one is an entitled People Story. Part 1, The Wedding We Wanted and Had. My lady wife is the anti-Karen, the anti-bridezilla. On our first date, she fanned out a stack of restaurant coupons and said, "Where do you want to take me?" We picked Pizza Hut. Her engagement ring is a heart-shaped amethyst with 2 little diamond chips. I bought it at Kmart. She cherishes it. Her wedding dress did not come from a bridal shop. It came from the Sears catalog. It's a very simple white, lace-straight T-length dress with a cream underdress. would not be out of place at an afternoon tea. I bought my three-piece navy pinstripe suit since I needed a suit anyway. We wore the same clothes, with different accessories, to a costume party as a 1920s gangster in his mall. We had the wedding at our church. Our pastor was the real deal. He blessed the rings, and when he handed them back, they were ice cold. We exchanged the old wedding vows. Think King James Bible style. My lady wife nixed the obey, though. A couple of my buddies found out at the last minute that they could make it and showed up. After we said our vows, they pulled out swords and made an impromptu arch for us to walk under. My wife's friends were upset and started yelling, "Nobody told us to bring our swords!" Yeah, major sci-fi / fantasy / D&D / medieval geeks on both sides of the aisle. The reception was in the community room at the volunteer fire department I belonged to. Not fancy, but so informal and chill, and practically free. A local supermarket with an awesome hot food bar catered. Everybody had so much fun. My boss's boss, a good friend, gorgeous blonde, showed up in her little black dress and appropriately flirted with my buddies. I don't think anybody will forget the pillow mint fight that broke out. A few of my wife's older relatives seemed sort of confused at the antics at first, but ended up having a blast. My father-in-law had set a rough budget for the wedding in his head. My lady wife came in way under that, so he gave us the difference in cash at the reception. He was already paying for the honeymoon as his wedding present to us. The honeymoon was within a day's drive and was a huge deal for what we got. My lady wife remembers the complete total spent by us and Phil as $2,000 in 1992, which included the honeymoon. So under $4,500 today, 32 years together, 31 years married this October. Next anniversary, I'm going to take a page from my granddad and raise a toast to 5 years of wedded bliss. Part 2. Attempted hijacking. When my lady wife announced our engagement, one of her co-workers, not even a friend, apparently got wedding rabies. She was so happy and went over the top offering to help. My lady wife was doing the tiny amount of wedding planning that was needed, see above, as her MOH lived in New Jersey, we're in upstate NY, and had 2 kids to look after. Co-worker insisted that it wasn't fair to my wife that the MOH wasn't doing the wedding planning. She kept trying to insert herself as the wedding planner. Nice of her to offer, but she wanted to arrange our wedding the way she wanted it. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, no, we did not want frou-frou centerpiece thingies or any of that nonsense. Co-worker, not knowing my wife well, of course, had zero clue what our tastes are. My wife's MOH was already making custom silk flowers for us and the tables as a wedding present. I think co-worker was delusional enough to think she could weasel her way into being Mo-H. My wife kept politely but firmly shutting her down. The last straw was when co-worker called me to tell me about the surprise bridal shower she was throwing for my wife so I could get her there. Oh, hell no. First, my wife was already going to have a bridal shower at our house. Phil and I went down to the fire hall and watched baseball. Second, my wife hates surprise parties. Third, my wife would never have picked that restaurant. An overpriced steakhouse is the absolute last restaurant we would ever pick. Fourth, who the heck was co-worker planning on inviting? She didn't know any of my wife's friends. Wife shut that down hard. She immediately called co-worker and told her off. No meltdown, no yelling, no screaming, no bad language or insults. Just pure anger, as hot and bright as a welder's torch. Cue tears from co-worker. Boo-hoo-hoo, I was just trying to help. Nope. Denied. We joke that you need to keep my lady wife away from breakable objects when she's angry. Cities, mountain ranges, that kind of fragile stuff. Drama over, and the wedding happened. The next one is an entitled parent story. On the weekend immediately after July 4th, I hosted a family BBQ. My slightly older cousin in her mid-30s had told me that she was not coming a week in advance. Then about 2 hours before the event, she changed her mind and told me she would be coming with her husband and her 5-year-old baby girl. This wasn't a problem because we bought enough food for there to be lots of leftovers. While we were there, my husband and I were slaving away in front of 3 BBQs in the yard to cook for a group of 24 people plus 1 baby. We didn't have time to take a break or go inside with everyone else. They were inside because it was raining. During this time, my cousin or her husband constantly came over to complain about our food. They were the only ones who complained the food was too salty. Everyone else who came over to speak with us loved and devoured the food. After the Wagyu tomahawks were served, my cousin came over again. This time her face was red, and she was livid. It was red from anger and not drinking. She's a non-drinker. She started complaining that we should have known better that her baby couldn't eat such salty foods. and that we should have made separate food for them, unseasoned. I told her that there was no way we could have done that. We already bought all the food we needed beforehand. Everything was seasoned or dry-brined ahead of time. I suggested giving her a big bowl of water so she could try washing off any seasoning before feeding her baby, but she said that wasn't good enough. That's when her husband showed up and suggested that I go to the butcher and buy another tomahawk and come back. That way their daughter could also have some unseasoned. My husband said no. We weren't wasting time, gas, and money on a 1-5-year-old. Even if we did, she obviously would not have been able to finish an entire steak. I just don't understand what changed. She was never like this before she had her kid. Now she expects the world to revolve around her kid. Is this something that involuntarily happens to a large percentage of new parents? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.